Hi guys, and welcome to another video from Newgate. Today we're going to be looking at screening and more prominently evergreen screening, because we got so many people these days. You bought a house, another house goes up behind you, or there's already a house there, and you need something to give you that privacy. So what we need is evergreen, not deciduous, because there's no point in putting it there being private all summer and then in the winter it being wide open. So what we need is evergreen screening. So let's talk about that, and let's look at all the different forms that we could buy that in and supply to you in. So let's have a look at this to start with. The most common evergreen screening that you use for hedges is leylandii. I'm not going to talk to you about that because I think everyone knows about leylandii and the problems associated with that, the fact that they grow too fast, the fact that they overtake areas, they shade your garden, red spider mite can destroy it. So we'll keep away from the conifers. They are an option, and if you were to plant a conifer hedge, we'd recommend Thuya plicata, because that tends to be more resistant from the spider mite, and also it rejuvenates when you cut it back hard. So Thuya plicata is a nice one. But what I would do if I was looking for an evergreen hedge right now is look at one of these four. Okay, so first of all we've got Ceanothus. Comes in many different varieties. Concha tends to be the hardiest one. Okay, we supply these in numerous sizes. This is an instant one, so I'm going to show you the instant ones, but always be aware that we have all the smaller sizes as well. Okay, so this is California lilac. It gets lovely blue flowers in the spring, attracts the bees and the butterflies, and will form a nice tight instant evergreen screen. I think this works best as a mixed screen with other evergreens rather than just having all one. Alright, but that's Ceanothus, so you can buy that as a big tall plant there, 6-7 foot tall at $59.99, or right down to sort of $6.99 for a small one. Okay, common laurel or cherry laurel, and there's numerous different types of laurel, is hard to beat. It's easy to grow, it's almost bomb proof. Might get a bit of mildew sometimes. Wasps tend to have a few months where they feed on it, but apart from that it's one of the best plants you can get. Okay, parts of it are a little bit poisonous if you're going to start eating it and grinding the roots, but apart from that I wouldn't be worried. It's planted commonly and no one has any problems. Laurel needs pruning maybe once or twice a year, okay, to form a nice formal hedge, but again it could be used as part of a group of evergreens, so you get that foliage contrast like we've got here. Again, the laurel can be bought as a 10-12 foot specimen, or as this little one here. Give you an idea of price, this one's about 4 or 5 quid, depending on quantity, where you're going up to sort of 50-60 quid for the big ones. Okay, red robin's next. This is a nice one. This is one called Robusta compacta. Has a lovely a small leaf on it, you can see here, rather than the big leaf that the red robin normally has. We obviously have the bigger ones as well, but Robusta compacta is nice. Forms a lovely hedge, very tolerant of the wind, where the regular Photinia can be a little bit prone to wind damage. Okay, this one again can be bought in all different sizes, grown for its bright red leaves that come out in the spring and the summer. Does get white flowers as well. Okay, so this one could all these can be planted as multi-stem plants to grow as a hedge. That's the normal way you'd think of screening. Another one we've got here is one of my favourites. This is Prunus lusitanica. Now Prunus lusitanica is a Portuguese laurel, totally different to the other laurel. It's a lot smaller leaf, gets a nice little red stem along there, and it gets a beautiful white flower. Okay, again that can be bought any size. Something this sort of size you're looking at £80-90. Okay, so if it was me and you wanted something multi-stemmed, I would look at planting these, maybe repeated, to give you colour at the different times, to give you the white flowers in the summer from the Prunus. You'd get the red leaves from the Photinia, you get flowers and glossy foliage from the normal cherry laurel, and you get the blue flowers from the Ceanothus. And all these planted at this height will give you an instant sort of 7 foot hedge. Now then, another way of screening, especially if you want to plant in front of it, because obviously all these things are going to grow out at you and you're going to have to prune them back, so is to use frames. Now frames are ready made. Okay, if you look over here, the work's been done for you. These are just a few select ones. We do the frames from 120 centimetres to 150 centimetres right up to these sort of 2.4 metre frames. So as you can see, this is taller than me. Planted, you'd obviously lose a bit of height, but you'd still be well up your 6 foot fence. The different varieties that we use This is pyracantha. This comes in numerous forms. Firethorn is its common name. You've got yellow berries, we get orange berries, and we've got red berries. Great thing about this one is the birds love it. It gets white flowers in the summer that then form these berries in the autumn and winter, and obviously the leaves are always green. It's also quite thorny, so if you let it grow above your hedge, it's a natural deterrent. Okay, so these will live on the frames until they're old enough and strong enough to support themselves, and eventually the frames will rot away, and then you can just keep them pruned against your fence. But the great things about these is they're not going to take the border over, and then you can plant a nice herbaceous planting or some dwarf shrubs in front. So another one we have on the frame here is Ceanothus. This is the Ceanothus concha I talked about before. Okay, getting the blue flowers in the spring. Then we have this lovely one here, which, can you see this flower here? This is Fremontodendron californicum. This is an evergreen, likes a sunny wall, and it'll grow absolutely rampantly. All right. And then this one here is Garrya elliptica. Now Garrya elliptica is really nice because that gets lovely silky catkins that are then displayed right through the winter. Really glossy foliage, so it's a nice winter interest, that one. So these frames can give you colour at all different times, but be evergreen, that's the key. Alright, now another option, if you don't like the formality of the frames, is to grow something like a bamboo. Now some people go, oh no, not bamboo, I hate bamboo, I'm digging it out left, right and centre, and that's because they've not been planted properly. So bamboo, 10 years ago I was still planting with lino, putting lino around the roots to stop the rhizomes, because these are beasts and they will spread and they'll form a really stunning screen. Okay, so bamboos, this one is Phyllostachys aurea. We also do Phyllostachys basseti, Phyllostachys nigra, which is the black bamboo. There's a whole range of bamboos, but the great thing about these bamboos is that the Phyllostachys range is the leaf's quite small, they don't dominate, they allow light through. Okay, you get the movement and the sound. They don't prone to any disease. The only thing that can trouble them is not being watered enough. Okay, when the leaves fall, you allow them to sit on the base and form this natural mulch, which then feeds the root ball with nitrogen. New canes pop up like this, and in a good year you'll probably get 10 or 12 of these popping up to about, I don't know, up to 4 to 5 metres tall. But what they'll do is they'll grow at different heights, they won't look formal, and they'll give you that instant screening. These are probably more cost effective than buying the big trees that we're going to talk about in a minute, which look totally different. But you can buy a nice big bamboo like this from anywhere between sort of 50 to 80 pounds, depending on variety, and you've got an instant sort of 2.5 metre screen. Okay, another thing you can do with bamboo to save money is to cut them in half. Okay, so you can literally put a saw right through the middle of this as long as it's wet, because it is a grass, so you'd be dividing it, and then you can spread that out and get more for your money. Now, how do you stop it spreading? That's what everybody always asks, because when bamboo spreads, it is a nightmare to get out. The way to stop it spreading is something called rhizome barrier, and it's a polished plastic. We have it here at the nursery, and basically that has to be sunken around the root, and as the rhizome grows, it hits the plastic, because it's not a matte finish, it's actually a polished finish, so the rhizome can't stick to it, and it slips off and grows upwards. And so that way you can basically create the shape of your barrier. You can have a long thin one, you can have a wider half moon one. So there's options with using the rhizome barrier. Okay. Right, so that's your bamboos. Now if you want something a bit more instant, a bit more formal looking, then you're going to use the evergreen trees, but you're going to use them in one of two forms. Well, there's actually 3 ways. You could use an untrained tree like this. This is the cheaper way of doing it. So this is a Photinia Louise. I'll show you all these in a minute, but that's an untrained tree. So you plant that, you let it grow for a few years, and then you can basically start to take these laterals off and allow the head to form above the fence line. Because this is your average sort of 6-foot fence here, so it's giving you an idea of what it look like in your garden. So what I tend to do when people want these is we tend to plant a few different varieties so they've got interest all the time. They're all evergreen, and they can all be then trimmed to form the shapes that I'll show you in a minute with the pleached hedging. So these informal trees, we start with my favourite here, which is Hauheria. Hauheria is it can be grown as a shrub or a tree. These are always feathered all the way to the bottom, and what you do is you gradually take these feathers off, to form the head. If you can imagine the bare stem, and then you'd have a nice standard tree eventually. You can leave the feathers on, but it'll just take more room up in the garden. They do have a lovely weeping habit, these. So it's Howeria Snow White. It's got quite a smallish, tough leaf, and it gets a lovely white flower in June and July. Okay, so that's Howeria. That's a brilliant screener. Grows really well in sort of clay soil in Penwitham as well. Then we've got Photinia. All right, that's always a good screener. This is Louise. This gets a pink new leaf, and then it gets a white margin on the older leaf. So that's an interesting tree. Then you've got the regular red robin, so a bigger leaf than the one we showed you before. Again, bright red foliage right through the season. It's not flushed at the minute, so you've got the green leaves on that one. Okay, all these trees are about 6 to 7 foot planted. Another good one for the informal screening is Eucalyptus gunnii. This obviously is more rampant than the others. This will grow pretty quickly. It's got a beautiful scented blue leaf. It's a cider gum. The trunk on this one becomes a nice sort of silvery colour in time. Okay, and the variety Azura is a bit more compact and a bit bluer than gunnii. So that's a really nice screener, and it'll grow quickly, and you can chop it and shape it. Something a bit different, which we're always looking for, is Eucryphia. Eucryphia is a beautiful tree, and it flowers really well, and it's fragrant. Okay, so that's another one that you can plant. Now, the cost of these trees, you're looking at about sort of between 40 to 50 pounds for these. But like I say, get them in within a couple of years. They're above your fence. They're giving you some screening straight away, and then you can decide how you want them to grow. And now we'll look at the different forms that you can do. So you can create these trees to form a standard. This is a standard. You've got a clear stem of about 1.8 meters. I'll stand on it just so you can see. I'm about 1.8, just shy actually. Never quite made 6 foot. I'm not bitter. So that there would sit just above, once planted, would sit just above this fence line here, and then you'd have the head, which is a good 1.5 metres. Okay, this is actually the cherry laurel that we looked at before as a bush, grown as a tree. Okay, so that standard form could be formed by these younger ones. This one here is the Photinia that we spoke about before, the Photinia robusta. So this is the smaller leafed red robin, very tough, forms a lovely large big head on it, and will give you that nice instant screening. So if you don't mind spending a bit more money, these are on average are about you're looking roughly about £200 for the Photinia, and about 380 for the laurel. They're all on Newgate Direct. All these are on Newgate Direct, and we do deals for quantity, because we understand that if you've got a long line, you're going to need a few of these, and that's not going to be cheap. So there are substantial deals to be had, but you'd have to call the nursery for that. Okay. Now then, if you don't like that rounded form and you want something different, you want to, if it maybe space is a problem, then we're looking at pleach trees. Now, at the start of the video, before I showed my ugly mug, there was a picture of a lovely line of screens that we have here called Carpinus betulus. That's hornbeam. They're lovely, they thicken out really quickly, but they do drop a lot of the leaves in the winter. So that's something to consider. If you don't mind that, then Carpinus is a really good option. But today I'm showing you 2 evergreen ones. So again, we're going for Photinia red robin again. This one has about a 1.6 to 1.7 metre trunk, so planted it would just be slightly below the fence line. Okay, but it's got to make up for the fact that it has that slightly smaller stem. They've given a massive frame there, so that's about a 1.5 metre frame all around, 2 metres across. Okay, now these planted allow you then to plant anything you want in the garden underneath. So they're giving you that instant height. They're taking the height from, they're taking all the problems that you'd have by planting a bush if you've got limited space. They're lifting it, elevating it, and allowing that just to be seen above. Okay, so they're a really clever way of growing a Photinia. There's a lot of work gone into them. These all come from Italy, where they're grown en masse. But yeah, a lot of work, so you do have to pay for that. But if you're buying a few of these, we can be looking at about sort of 280, 290 a piece. Alright. When planting things like this, the big ones, we do advise that you just double stake them. So stake down either side, and then a tie pulling in each direction. Otherwise you could put a cross member across and tie it in the centre. Okay, so that's your Photinia frame. Something a bit different, and not many places have, is the Magnolia grandiflora frame. So this is Magnolia grandiflora. They are quite a young frame, so they're still growing. But that again, to buy one of these fully grown, you're looking at £600 very often in most centres. So again, we could get these down to about sort of £280 if you're buying a few. These will form a very big glossy white scented flower, big glossy leaf, and just a beautiful plant, and very hardy. So that's your Magnolia grandiflora. So there, hopefully that's been interesting for you. As you can see, you've got all those different options. You can have instant frames, you can have instant big heads, you can take the smaller ones and let them grow, or you can just grow a hedge, or you can grow your frames. Otherwise you can use the bamboo, which will allow the light through, give you movement, and will look totally different. Finally, you can use olives, especially up north at the moment. I've got about 7 or 8 in my garden, never had a problem with frost damage, and these nice big ones at the moment are an absolute bargain. They're about 60 quid on the nursery at the moment, and they'll be on Newgate Direct soon. So again, evergreen, hardy, and just give you that bit of instant screening. Right, thank you very much, and I hope that's been helpful. See you again.